Good evening and welcome everyone to the council meeting. Would my chaplain please open the meeting with a prayer? This also allows time for personal reflection before we start the business of the meeting.
We pause and gather together in the stillness of this moment. We pray for peace in our world, a peace that goes beyond our understanding, a peace that can heal and reconcile. Grant us the wisdom to seek peace with respect, dignity, and to uphold justice, so that we may have peace in our hearts, peace between people, and in our communities. Amen.
Please be seated. The purpose of this meeting is to deal with a number of major issues for the well-being of Torbay and the best interests in the community. My role as Civic Mayor is to ensure that today's agenda is dealt with efficiently and to allow fairness throughout the discussions. As you are aware, the meeting is governed by strict procedures or standing orders. To make sure the meeting is run fairly, I expect healthy discussion and respectful speeches by councillors, and I will not allow repetition. I will also not allow any disrespectful personal comments against other councillors or officers, barracking, talking across the chamber, or talking loudly amongst yourselves. If I see any of these behaviours, I will stop the debate and call the meeting to order, and I will not hesitate to use standing orders to remove councillors from the meeting. If members wish to make a point of order or personal explanation, I will consider on a case-by-case basis when I take these. Although standing orders allow individuals to be seated during their speeches, I would prefer, if whenever possible, councillors to stand when addressing the council so that you can be clearly seen and heard. When speaking, please ensure your microphones are turned on. If members wish to leave the meeting before it is finished, please follow Standing Order A25.7 and give your apologies before you leave via the Head of Governance Support. Please note that we are live streaming this meeting via the Council's YouTube channel to encourage more people to engage in our public meetings. The proceedings of the Council meeting will also be recorded. Please can attendees refrain from watching the live stream, as this will cause interference with our viewers. We are not expecting any fire alarm testing today. In the event of evacuation, you will hear a recorded message requesting you to evacuate the building. Please leave near the nearest exit. The Riviera Centre staff will assist you. Once outside, please assemble in front of the tennis courts to the seaward side of the building. Please ensure that all mobile phones and iPads are turned to silent. I will call a break if the meeting is going beyond 7 p.m. Apologies. Do we have any apologies for absence?
Yes, we do, Madam Mayor. So we've got apologies from Councillors Harvey, Nicolau, Law and Atia Allah.
Thank you. Group leaders, do you have any further apologies? I propose that the minutes of the meeting held on the 6th of February 2025 to be signed as correct. Is there a seconder?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Happy to second.
I will now take the vote. All those in favour? And that's unanimous. Thank you. Would the Council's monitoring officer please remind members of the dispensation on members' interests in relation to the setting of budget and council tax?
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Members, you'll be aware that there is a dispensation for all members in respect of the setting of council tax and any matter relating to a company controlled by the council if you are an unpaid director of that company and appointed to the role by the council. This means that you are permitted to discuss and to vote on the budget in respect of these matters without the need to declare an interest. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Have members any non-pecuniary or disclosable pecuniary interests in any of the matters on today's agenda? In accordance with the decision of the Standards Hearing Subcommittee held on the 11th of February 2025, I invite Councillor Maddison to make her apology to the Council. Councillor Maddison, are you going to make your apology?
Thank you. I see that I've been asked to respond. Thank you, Madam Mayor, for this opportunity to apologise. Your invitation comes at the end of a complaints process, and I think we all know it's cost rather a lot of money, something like £15,000 or upwards, I'm guessing. And I think that in view of that, some explanation is due if my fellow councillors and indeed members of the public are going to understand it. I'm now being asked to apologise because in May last year, I spoke the words, "Shame on you," quietly and calmly.
Sorry, Councillor Maddison, are you going to apologise?
Madam Mayor, you have asked me to respond, and that's what I am doing right now. I would like to say the script refers to my apology in terms which suggest it is understood there will be an apology, which puts me in a position of having to explain myself, since no discussion has taken place with anybody that supports that understanding. So I think that's the context for my comments. Thank you. So I'm now being asked to apologise because in May last year, I spoke the words "shame on you" quietly and calmly to the Chief Executive, Anne-Marie Bond, after a council meeting. And later that day, I commented on Facebook in a way which was critical of the council and which suggested political partisanship in favour of the Conservatives, but which used no abusive language, nor was it in any way abusive of individuals. In no respect did making those comments bring me into disrepute personally.
Sorry, Councillor Maddison, are you going to apologise?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As I said, the script refers to my apology. The Council has impugned my reputation by publishing the suggestion that I have something to apologise for, and it is therefore directly relevant to explain myself, since this has been done in full Council, and this is a point of personal explanation and in the public eye. So thank you. As I said, the comments were online for a few days before being removed. The hearing to assess the damage that they supposedly caused in that time took 9 months to develop, and it lasted for over 8 hours. And it failed to offer any evidence whatsoever that qualifying harm or disrepute was caused.
Sorry, Councillor Maddison, this is not an apology.
Sorry.
But please,
the agenda item says
please take your seat, Councillor Maddison.
the agenda item says that I am to
Please take your seat, Councillor Maddison.
The agenda item says that I am to respond, and this is my response.
The agenda item says that you must apologise to the council. There is no apology in what you're saying. So please take your seats. Please take your seats. Councillor Maddison, please take your seats.
I think it is a point of fact that the agenda item asks me to respond, and this is what I am doing. And I have been given no guidelines.
Sorry, the monitoring officer wants to say a few words.
So, Councillor Maddison, the item on the agenda is for you, in accordance with the decision of the Standards Committee hearing held on the 11th of February, to invite you to make an apology to the Council. It's not with regards to you making an explanation. Clearly, there is an indication for you to apologise, and I think what the chairperson is asking you is, are you going to make the apology? It's not about reliving the actual hearing itself, if I may finish. And if you're not going to apologise, then in accordance with standing orders, the chairperson's decision is final. So I think, Madam Chair, it's about giving a further opportunity for the apology to be given. And if that's not what is intended, then you've already indicated that you would like Councillor Maddison to sit down.
So, thank you. I will just once more point out that actually reads there is a pause for Councillor Maddison to respond with no guideline given as to what that response should be. So I would like to just say that if I don't complete this, I will be out on Speaker's Corner at 10 o'clock on Saturday, and that anyone who would like...
Councillor Maddison, please take your seat. Thank you.
Thank you.
Members of the audience, can you please take your seats? Can you please take your seats? I have no announcements to make today. Has the Leader of the Council any announcements that he wishes to make?
Thank you indeed, Madam Mayor. I have indeed. I wish to announce about an upcoming public meeting. So the government has written to Torbay Council to informally invite the council to work with other council leaders in Devon to develop a proposal for local government reorganisation. Councils are requested to submit initial proposals which are non-binding to the government by March the 21st of this year, before waiting for feedback around creating a fuller business case by November of this year. So at this free engagement, which is open to the members of the public, to our stakeholders, myself and senior officers will help try to explain what government has asked, some of the Torbay's potential options and the timelines that have been laid out. There will, of course, be an opportunity to ask questions. The event is free, public meeting on the 11th, sorry, I haven't got that down. On the 11th of March, it's at the Princess Theatre in Torquay. The event is free, but you will need to book in advance, and the press release with the link will be coming out tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. And I understand the Chief Executive and the Overview and Scrutiny Coordinator have no announcements that they wish to make. I move to item 6, members' questions. The questions and answers have been circulated and are noted as submitted. Members, these are available on your iPads under the late reports pack. I will ask any supplementary questions. For those asking a supplementary question, it must arise directly out of the original question or the reply. May I remind members that supplementary questions shall not include a statement. I will be interrupting you if I consider your supplementary question is a statement. Please note that there is a time limit of 1 minute to ask supplementary questions. The response time for each supplementary question is 3 minutes, and the overall maximum time for members' questions is 30 minutes. I refer to question 1 in respect to affordable homes for local people at Preston Down Road. Councillor Penny, do you have a supplementary question?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I do. I'm much obliged. It arises, number one, thank you, Councillor Timon. Always worth reading what Councillor Timon has to say, quite genuinely. Good stuff down here. I recognise that. However, it's about timing. I wonder if you would agree. Basically, 2 things, please. Had this administration implemented the previous administration's already, what was the word used in those days, oven-ready solution, we could have been 2 years ahead on this particular project, and more local individuals and families on our sadly lengthy waiting list could now be secure in their own home. And indeed, the capital surplus he's talking about.
Councillor Penny, you have 10 seconds to finish your question.
Watch. Okay, and secondly then, demonstrated in these restricted, financially stressful times, which I recognise, we, the council, are as good as our word in trying to provide affordable accommodation now, not only planning for the future. People
Thank you, Councillor
in
Penny.
now. Thank you.
Councillor Tyman, please provide a response.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Whilst the previous plans could have been implemented possibly quicker, and I only say possibly because none of us have control about what speed developers actually build, but yes, it's possible it could have been done quicker. I believe that it would have produced at the end of the day a lot less in the way of affordable housing than the current structure. That's what I believe, all right? People may shake their head. The current proposal and the current actions will yield considerably greater receipts for the council. They, used in conjunction with Homes England grant, have the capability of bringing forward far greater numbers of social housing. That is what we are aiming for. It is always a difficult choice to know exactly what's going to produce what at the end of the day. We can only aim to produce the best results possible, and that's what I plan to continue to do.
Thank you. I refer to question 2 in respect to the implementation of Healthwatch Unpaid Carers Report recommendations on developing and improving access to training and awareness resources to help carers to manage their own health and well-being. Councillor Mandy Darling, do you have a supplementary question? Thank you. I refer to question 3 in respect of the implementation of Healthwatch Unpaid Carers Report recommendations on raising awareness of carer services and the full ranges of support available to them. Councillor Fox, do you have a supplementary question? Question 3.
Thank you, ma'am. I don't have a subsequent question. Thank you.
Thank you. I refer to question 4 in respect of repairing the paths linking Babbacombe Downs to Babbacombe Beach. I have been advised Councillor Billings will be responding to this question and not Councillor Lewis. Councillor George Darling, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Thank you for the response that was provided. It should be noted that Glen Sannox fell into disrepair over multiple previous administrations, so it's a really positive step that Swissco is now taking on, or agreeing to take on, the management of these paths. However, the paths need to be brought up to standard, so will the council commit to working with the community partnership and businesses in Babbacombe to find capital to do this?
Thank you. Councillor Billings, please provide a response.
Thank you, Councillor Darling. I appreciate you recognising the substantial improvement that this administration is bringing forward in terms of the Brighter Bay initiative, and you're correct that Glen Sannox had fallen into disrepair over a continued period previously. I'd be delighted to work with yourself, your other ward colleagues, those in Swissco, to try and access those private sector funding opportunities that are there. The Swissco, myself, we want to work very much for the people of Torbay, and if there are people in the community that can work alongside, that's welcome, and delighted to work with you on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Billings. I refer to question 5 in respect of spend on the Harbour Public Realm project in Torquay. Councillor Long, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, please, Madam Mayor. Just a quick one. I'd just like to seek some reassurance from Councillor Lewis that whatever the overspend is, can we have confirmation that no monies will be transferred from the pavilion from any monies the former leasee has provided to plug that gap? Thank you.
Councillor Chris Lewis, please provide a response.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed, Madam Mayor. I can't give that assurance tonight because, of course, it goes through the Town Deal Board, which Councillor Darling sits on as well. But I can assure you that, well, I hope that everyone likes what has been done down at the harbour. Certainly the Bay of Lights that came across, everyone enjoyed themselves. The feedback was excellent. So I'm glad we managed to get it across the line. As Councillor Long will remember, because it was his portfolio, it was very difficult to get it across the line because we couldn't find anyone who wanted to do it. We managed to find someone who wanted to do it. They found problems, as I've said in my official answer. We managed to overcome those, get it going, get it opened. We were going to have to open it up for a long period of time, Madam Mayor, over the summer. We didn't have to do that in the end. We worked with the contractor to be able to develop the harbour as it is today. And I think it's a great result that we managed to do it, not only for the people of Torquay, but also for the visitors. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lewis. I refer to question 6 in respect of the cost to the local authority in relation to the complaint against Councillor Katia Madison. Councillor Steve Darling, do you have a supplementary question?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I do have a supplementary question. Do you believe that this is an effective use of public funds? And are you proud that Torbay Council undertook this action? Thank you.
Councillor Jackie Thomas, please provide a response.
Yep, thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor, Councillor Darling. I think the costs were a little higher in this standards complaint made against Councillor Madison, as Councillor Madison provided considerable additional information which fell outside
Point of personal information. Explanation.
Thank you, Councillor Madison. I'll just let Councillor Jackie Thomas finish and then I'll take your point of personal explanation. Councillor Thomas.
Thank you very much. So obviously, you know, we needed to bring in the investigator, but nevertheless needed to be considered by him to determine it irrelevant and then rewrite a new report. So the code of conduct is a very important part of being a Torbay councillor. It is something that we all sign up to, which is a declaration of acceptance and applies to us all until we cease to be a member. When the code is breached, there is a standards procedure in which we all have to respect and a process to follow. So basically, if you don't break the rules, then Torbay Council wouldn't have to undertake all these additional costs. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jackie Thomas. Councillor Madison.
Thank you very much. Councillor Lewis refers to breaking the rules, but actually it seems that the rules are not particularly well known here. Councillor Lewis, I apologise. Councillor Thomas. So Councillor Thomas was chairing the meeting, so you're quite right. It wasn't Councillor Lewis. But as I said, there has been reference to the fact that the rules and code was broken, but I'm afraid that will play out in a judicial hearing, which is to follow, because I think this is a matter.
Councillor Madison, just sit down for a moment, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this is a point of personal explanation. So if you could stick to the personal explanation, please, that'd be very grateful. Thank you.
And indeed, I am going to be explaining my point and my position on what has just been said. And this includes referring now to Councillor Thomas's comment that there was a lot of extra material provided by me. And the truth is that whatever material I did provide, certainly no proper defence was permitted to enter into the paperwork, and therefore it was an extremely unfair and partial presentation of evidence, and indeed the whole process was deeply flawed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Madison. I refer to question 7 relating to the letter from Minister McMahon inviting Torbay Council to submit proposals for local government reorganisation. Councillor Carter, do you have a supplementary question?
No, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. I refer to question 8 in respect of implementation of the Health Watch Unpaid Carers Report recommendations on improving access to health and social care services for carers. Councillor Mandy Darling, do you have a supplementary question?
No, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. I refer to question 9 in respect of implementation of the Health Watch Unpaid Carers Report recommendations on identifying why in some areas carers and or the cared for person's needs are not being met by paid care services. Councillor Fox, do you have a supplementary question?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have no further questions.
Thank you. I refer to the remote green waste collection services for Torquay Town Hall Car Park and Brixham College. Councillor George Darling, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, Madam Mayor. It's pleasing to reassure residents that the service is continuing this year. However, it's really disappointing that the Conservative administration is cutting the service for Torquay whilst at the same time raising council tax by close to the maximum amount. Will the Conservative administration commit to not cutting waste disposal services further through this council's term?
Councillor Billings, please provide a response.
I don't recognise the question as just raised. This administration is not cutting services in the way that the normal... It'd be nice not to be interrupted, Councillor.
Point of personal explanation.
This administration is not cutting services.
Sorry, Councillor Billings. Councillor Darling, I'll take it after Councillor Billings is finished. Thank you.
This administration is not cutting services. The same amount of money is still being used to provide those services. What we are doing is providing services in a different way. So in Brixham, residents have historically had a monthly collection for green waste from a remote location. In Torquay, historically, for reasons that aren't documented, the provision was fortnightly. The attendance in Torquay was low, and following consultation with the Green Space Forum, we are trialling a monthly service. If it shows that that doesn't work, then following the trial, the fortnightly service will be reinstated. However, trialling this, if it works, provides the opportunity to put money back in other areas of recycling across the Bay, for example in recycling action days and other things in different wards. This is not about reducing the amount of money spent. This is about spending money wisely, which is why I don't recognise the word cut. Now, it can't be that it's a sensible use of public money to provide a service when for a substantial period we're paying employees to stand there and users aren't attending. Last year, for example, we were, when it was fortnightly, on one occasion we had virtually no one turn up because we've currently got no way of notifying people if there's incredibly inclement weather that it would be that Swissco would like to not run the service that day, partly because when there's very inclement weather, no one historically has used it. Now, in the absence of that, balancing those two, it seems most appropriate to try to do this on this trial, and if it doesn't work, we'll reflect on that and readjust it, but the plan is to re-put that money into other services. Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor George Darling, I didn't hear your name mentioned, so can you just explain what the point of personal explanation was for, please?
So, Madam Mayor, it's in relation to explain what I meant when cutting, if it might be possible to explain that.
I'm sorry, it's not really a point of personal explanation, but please please take your seat. Thank you. I refer to question 11 in respect of council use of the community board to engage on regeneration and the town deal Torquay. Councillor Long, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, please, Madam Mayor. I was just wondering whether Councillor Lewis could perhaps look at the terms of reference for the community board and perhaps make it more efficient rather than having lots of different organisations being created for consultation. Thank you.
Councillor Chris Lewis, please provide a response.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I'm slightly confused because when I took over the portfolio that Councillor Long had, the community board was there, terms of reference and everything. I thought it worked pretty well. But very happy to look at it again and see if I can make improvements to the previous portfolio holder who set it up, I think. But very happy to do so. But I did think it was working quite well. But, you know, I must be mistaken. Thank you very much, Madam.
Thank you. I refer to question 12 in respect of implementation of Healthwatch unpaid carers report recommendations on a risk scale or checklist for carers. Councillor Mandy Darling, do you have a supplementary question?
No, I don't, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. I now refer to question 13 in respect of implementation of the Healthwatch unpaid carers report recommendations on service leaders, taking a joined-up approach to ensure local plans for carers are aligned across the whole Devon system. Councillor Fox, do you have a supplementary question?
I do, Madam Chairman, and thank you for the reply from Councillor Tranter. You referred to NHS Devon being approached for an update for their plans. That seems helpful. I just want to ask Councillor Tranter if when that response comes in, if you could basically broadcast that information to us all. Thank you.
Councillor Tranter?
Absolutely. Thank you.
I refer to question 14 in respect of York Road residents controlled parking zone application. Councillor George Darling, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, Madam Mayor. I'm pleased that we now have another date when residents will finally be able to progress their CPZ applications. It's worrying that this has taken the Cabinet member 2 years, despite it being reported in the answer as a priority. And again, the Cuthbert Main crossing, 2 years, apparently a priority. The St Mary's Church 20-mile-an-hour zone, 2 years, apparently a priority. Can the member please advise what he's prioritising now so that I can warn my residents what to expect?
Councillor Billings, please provide a response.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The Cabinet member is prioritising what he put in his administration's manifesto, which is delivering road safety improvements, particularly for vulnerable road users. And members around the chamber will have supported the step change in delivery of 20-mile-an-hour zones outside schools. Now, we've gone from 2 20-mile-an-hour zones over a however many year period, I forget, to delivering 6 within 1 financial year. We're talking another 6 in the next financial year. That's what the Cabinet member is prioritising. Now, Councillor, the same team that are delivering those road safety improvements are the same team that are drafting the text in the toolkit which will shortly be published. So prioritising and balancing is a key choice in politics, and the Cabinet member has prioritised delivering road safety improvements around schools compared to, in this instance, controlled parking zones. That's not to say they're not important. As per my answer, there has been a policy vacuum in controlled parking zones since 2016. It's not previously been addressed. So alongside that step change improvement in 20-mile-an-hour zones. We already now have a controlled parking zone policy, and by the end of March, we will have the toolkit published alongside it. You're correct that we've got other road safety improvements, but I believe and stand by the prioritisation that we have put forward. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. I now refer to question 15 in respect of the local plan working party. Councillor Long, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, please, Madam Mayor. My supplementary is in two parts. I was just be useful to find out from the Cabinet member quite what he means by members of the public changing the dynamic of meetings and why that is necessarily a bad thing. And secondly, in relation to members of the council attending meetings, and that being difficult because of large maps, wouldn't it be better to allow members of the council to attend virtually if they're away on council business elsewhere, for example, rather than not at all? Thank you.
Councillor Chris Lewis, please provide a response.
Thank you very much indeed. I am again following on from the previous administration who used to hold a number of meetings on the local plan and other issues concerned with it, and never invited the public or the members of the neighbourhood forum to it. So I'm just following. We have a more a set process in so much that we've got a formal working party. Of course, there are issues that are discussed at that meeting that the Labour government have passed down that we've got to try and build 940 houses a year. It's a very, very difficult process. There are bits of land in the bay that we have to look at which are very, very sensitive. And if it got out into the public, into developers, it would be a major problem for Torbay Council. And that's why at this stage it is a private meeting. As we move further forward, we would love the public to come. We would love the neighbourhood forum to come when it is appropriate. And that's what we will do. Why we don't hold it virtually, I'm a bit old-fashioned. I like to see people in person. I like to have the discussions. We had a meeting this week. Was it this week? Yes, this week on the local plan. And it went extremely well. It wasn't political. And we... Shame. Councillor Darling says it was a shame. I agree. It was a shame that he wasn't there with us because not many other councillors actually attended, and they could have attended. It's open to all councillors. And you're quite right, Councillor Darling. It was a shame.
Point of personal explanation when I can, please.
It is a shame that more councillors didn't come. But I think more of these committees...
Sir, you're interrupting the meeting, behaving improperly. If you continue to interrupt the meeting in this manner, I will order your immediate removal from the building. Councillor Steve Darling, I'll take your point of personal explanation in just a moment. Councillor Chris Lewis.
Yeah, and as I said, I am old-fashioned, and I think it is much better when we have these sort of events in person. When I was in opposition and they had the overview and scrutiny, I asked for that, and I was told quite firmly that no, overview and scrutiny, you have to come in person. And that is a major committee. And I hope that we will be able to invite the public as we move forward. The neighbourhood forum weren't invited because it was a council meeting. There will come a time when we'll be delighted to see them there. But this was a private meeting, and I was quite shocked when they turned up on the day, having been informed that it was a private meeting. But I think it works well, and I'm pleased that the way it does work well, so I don't think we're going to change it at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Steve Darling, what was your point of personal explanation?
Thank you. Sorry. Thank you. My concern is that I was named then for non-attendance when Councillor Lewis is perfectly aware that I am away representing our community in Westminster. I regularly attend meetings with Councillor Lewis and Thomas from that location virtually. I've also attended the virtual school on such a Teams meeting. I would just reinforce that actually having these meetings online will actually boost attendance, and I would hope that we...
Thank you, Councillor Darling, for your point of personal explanation.
An indulgence.
I move to item 7. Please refer to page 15 along with the additional appendix 8, public health ring-fenced grant uplift proposal, and revise appendix 4 as circulated on the 20th of February 2025. Legislation requires a recorded vote on the budget proposals, and therefore this will happen as a matter of course on tonight's budget items. Can Councillor David Thomas please present the Cabinet's budget proposals? You have 15 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Pulling together the budget is always a complicated business, and this year has been no different. We went out with our original draft proposals before Christmas, where we presented a set of ambitions. However, we indicated a shortfall of £400,000. Not surprisingly, really, as this was before our settlement was known. However, we used our best endeavours to give us some idea of what may be handed down from government. Our approach was to make the most of our assets whilst maintaining financial stability and building on the foundations we have already put in place. Our proposal now covers both capital and revenue spends for 25-26, and although I know others will talk more about the capital plan, I do wish to announce that we will be spending £32.6 million on capital projects in this financial year, delivering on some of our key ambitions, including the Paynton and Preston Promenade, Oldway Mansion Phase 1, our Hotels to Homes project, and St Kilda's in Brixham, to name but a few. And whilst we are committed to aligning our budget with our shared priorities, including improving services, investing in sustainable growth, and enhancing the quality of life of our residents, our capital build programme is just as important. During the opportunity this evening of laying out our budget plans, I do want to break this down into various sections. I'm going to start off with prioritising residents' well-being. So first and foremost, our residents are at the heart of everything we do. With the economic challenges faced by many families in Torbay, it is crucial that we continue to invest in local services and support their daily lives. I would like to emphasise the need for a balanced budget to fund vital services, including adults and children's social care and affordable housing. Both of these budgets see a large increase, with an excess of £3.8 million investment in social care and over £1.4 million of new money being invested into affordable housing. We cannot allow our most vulnerable populations to fall through the cracks, and allocating funds to improve access to social care and affordable housing will not only assist those in need, but also foster a greater sense of community and safety across Torbay. Moving on to local businesses and our economic growth. Torbay's economy is dynamic. It's driven by tourism, healthcare and small businesses. The monies that we allocate to this budget should look at ways to stimulate more growth across the Bay, help us to support our local businesses and drive more people into the Bay, with additional events helping to provide more activity for those small enterprises who are the backbone of our local economy. As we look towards a sustainable future, we must allocate funds to address the environmental challenges that we all face. Whether it's improving waste management with a new allocation of £900,000, enhancing public transportation with a £2.3 million investment, or investing in green spaces and renewable energy projects over £350,000, sustainability is a high priority within this budget. Not only will these investments protect our natural environment, but they will also ensure Torbay moves further towards its ambition of zero carbon by 2050, as well as driving further savings through those initiatives. I do want to talk a little bit about our two flagship schemes, Operation Brighter Bay and Operation Town Centres. Torbay residents deserve modern, clean and safe, accessible public spaces. One of the main concerns we have had confirmed through both our surveys and our ongoing street engagement was the concern over how our place looks and feels. Hence, why last year we introduced two flagship schemes, Operation Brighter Bay and Operation Town Centres. Last year, we launched them both with a £300,000 base budget. I am delighted to announce this evening that we will be adding a further £300,000 into each operation. This means a total of £1.8 million of new money has been allocated into place-based services across the Bay since this Conservative administration started running the council. Staying with the place, our budget this evening includes the creation of a one-off allocation of £500,000 to invest in the Bay's play parks. We understand that the backlog of this work is well in excess of this money. However, it is a step in the right direction. A further long-running issue over the past 6 years has been the lack of investment in the base budget to support sport across the Bay. Last year, we allocated £75,000 as a one-off allocation. I am delighted to announce that this year we plan to put £75,000 into the base budget ongoing, and this will allow for much better planning. Our Bay is understandably made up of our communities, and we recognise that a number of those communities where deprivation indices are within some of the top 10% across the country. In order to help provide additional assistance, we are going to be introducing a new community grant fund to try to help further. This will initially be funded by a one-off £200,000 in this first year, and the guidelines will be worked up through Cabinet, through stakeholders, our community and councillors. We will be inviting applications to come forward which can bring long-term changes to those wards that will benefit from this money. Lastly, we set ourselves tight fiscal parameters as we must be responsible stewards of public funds. While we look to expand services and invest in our future, we must also be mindful of that fiscal responsibility. Careful planning and investment continue to allow us to provide the best possible services we can within the parameters that we've got while minimising waste. This budget reflects our commitment to both progress and the prudent use of taxpayers' money. Previous and ongoing strategic savings, investments and efficiency measures help us make sure that every penny counts. Hence, in conclusion, we bring forward a budget tonight that has no cuts to services, a continuation on the longer term strategic issues. This has never been a scattergun approach from the Conservatives. It has been a focus on areas that either make or break the council budget. We continue to provide strong financial management and continue to concentrate on the things that matter to our residents. In financial terms, when all around us we see councils taking the maximum increase allowable before referendum, and others who are suffering from deep financial issues and looking to raise council tax by up to 9.9%, our proposal sees a 4.75% increase, perhaps one of the lowest increases across the UK. But what does this allow us to do? In total, it will allow us to see an additional investment of £4.5 million in adults and community services, an additional £2.5 million into children's services, and an additional £3.7 million into Pride in Place. Therefore, the recommendations that are highlighted 1 to 7 in this evening's paper, I wish to move. I would also draw members' attention to paragraph 5, and I will read this out because it is something that has been added in a little bit later. It refers to the Public Health Ring Fence Grant, which was only announced literally a few days ago. So it includes, and those proposals are in Appendix 8. So item 5 says specifically that the proposals for the allocation of the Public Health Ring-Fenced Grant Uplift, as circulated on the 20th of February this year, and at Appendix 8 of the submitted report, be approved as part of the budget for 25-26. So thank you, Madam Mayor, for your indulgence. I so move the proposals 1 to 7 for the 25-26 capital and revenue budget.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Do you have a seconder?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I rise to second and I reserve my rights.
Thank you. I now invite the group leaders to make their opening speeches on the budget proposals on the Cabinet's motion. Councillor Long, you have 15 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Torbay Council has received a very good financial settlement from the government, probably the best for many years. This administration has also been the beneficiary of an excellent financial inheritance from the last administration, and the way the last administration handled the council's finances led to the Most Improved Councillor of the Year award in 2023. Despite this excellent financial outlook, the proposed budget will disappoint two groups of residents in Torbay. The first group of Torbay residents who will be disappointed will be those who voted Conservative in the 2023 local elections based on their manifesto commitment to keep council tax down. Indeed, if you use your search engine of choice and look up Conservative Manifesto 2023, the manifesto is still available, and as well as the words promising to keep council tax down, there is a graphic with an arrow pointing downwards, indicating that council tax under a Conservative administration will go down. And we've heard earlier this evening from a Cabinet member that the administration are apparently prioritising what is in their manifesto. So what have we had? Well, if this budget passes today, in the first 2 years of this minority administration, council tax will have gone up by 9.5%. I can only imagine that residents who voted Conservative on this promise will be saying, shame on you. And of course, the Conservative Police and Crime Commissioner is also hiking council tax again, and Paignton continues to be without a police station. The second group of people who will also be disappointed by this budget are those who want to see much more investment in Torbay. And I'm sure every councillor has a list of improvements that could be made, or highways but improvements that could be done, on which there's a huge backlog, or subsidised for much needed bus routes, or investment in our tourism hotspots. The list goes on and on. And of course, the tokenistic 0.24% amount that the administration has chosen not to take will cumulatively lead over the years to a significant amount that this council will not have to invest in our area. And I understand that my colleague, the leader of the independent group, has worked out how much not putting up the council tax by 0.24% will save residents. But I gather it's an absolutely minuscule amount of money for individual residents. If that amount was taken up, by my calculation, this council could, for example, give the poorest residents who are on council tax support a reduction in the amount of council tax that they have to pay. This would also save the council money not having to chase people and take people to court. Or this money that we're not taking could be spent reinstating the supporting people budget, which could help support our vulnerable residents and help us support our town centres, which of course is a huge priority for residents locally. There are sadly also this administration's pet projects, which are a waste of money. An example of this is the MyBay scheme, which is attracting very few paying customers, and if it was entered into the Eurovision competition, would receive a resounding null point. As well as the pet projects, there are also the Brighter Bay and Town Centre initiatives, which for my post bag are anything to go by, are proving highly ineffective. It also appears that this administration have ditched the commitment of the last administration that Torbay is the UK's premier resort, which is never mentioned anymore. I was also slightly concerned that the leader of the council was on the television news saying that there were no cuts. This is not quite correct. I understand that the libraries in Torbay are having to reduce their staff numbers, and the garden waste collection in Torquay is also being cut back or redesigned, if the word is the day. They amount to the same thing. On a positive note, this side of the chamber welcomes the fact that this administration have agreed to the recommendations from the Cross-Party Overview and Scrutiny Board for investment into our play parks, for money putting into the base for sport, and also a reserve for affordable housing using second home council tax money. And that last one is incredibly important. Only today the government released a report into the number of rough sleepers that there are across the country, broken down by areas, and Torbay has a record number of rough sleepers, so we need much more desperately needed affordable homes now, as Councillor Penny said earlier, and that money will hopefully help schemes get over the line if they're not immediately viable. Turning to the capital budget, the current administration, when in opposition, constantly criticised the last administration over delivery. And delivery was the much vaunted promise of this administration. To be fair, this administration never actually defined what delivery is. But if we just take the Torquay Harbour side, for example, we have in essence what has become nothing more than a larger pavement, where delivery turns out not to be delivery, because it turns out there weren't any cables for the lighting. and some of the payment has had to be dug up again, so that project isn't finished. And the cycleway that was promised was ditched because of, guess what, too many cables. And over in Paynton, the delivery seems to be car parks being turned into car parks. And at Brokenbury, delivery turns out simply to be apparently a proposal to sell the field rather than the council actually delivering anything. So in short, the promised delivery has been much more difficult than this administration expected, and the report card from residents, I imagine, will read, "Must do better." Throughout this speech, which is coming to an end shortly, I have referred to this budget being a Conservative budget. But of course there is some uncertainty about that. It appears from social media that some colleagues opposite are flirting with Reform UK. So in the interests of openness and transparency, it would be useful to know if this budget being proposed is a Conservative one or a Conservative Reform UK coalition budget proposal. Many thanks. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Long. Councillor Cowell, you have 15 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I'll probably be relatively short because, as you can tell, my voice may not last much to the joy of members opposite. It's certainly true that the budget that we debate tonight is based on the sound financial inheritance that we left in 2023. Completely different to that from 2019, when we had children's services spending out of control and escalating year on year. And it's to the credit of the Children's Services team, and in particular to Nancy Meehan and Cordelia Law at the time, and subsequently Councillor Bye, that we are not constantly facing those pressures of children's services. Equally, adult social care is in a sound footing because of the agreement and negotiations that we've had with, in terms of the Integrated Care Organisation. And again, I pay tribute to the Director of Adult Social Care, Jo Williams, who is sitting in amongst us tonight for the last time before she retires. So I'd just like to place on record my thanks to her, and I'm sure that's echoed by members around the room. And I think as we move forward and we think about the strength of Torbay's finances compared to that of other authorities, there are authorities around us who would die to be in our financial position. And when you consider that of Devon and beyond, who are, as the leader of the council referred to, are facing severe budget pressures and overspends and therefore cuts. We're not in that position in Torbay because I think we are fleet of foot as a small local unitary, and we need to bear that in mind as we move forward when we consider local government reorganisation. And of course, it's all smoke and mirrors, a lot of this really, because you know the administration is sort of claiming that this is all the extra spending is down to their fine financial management. But it's thanks to significant grants that are coming down from central government, as Councillor Long alluded to, with increased grants for adult social care and children's services, as well as the grant that is being enabled to be used for the extended provider responsibility. It sounds really exciting, doesn't it? But it does mean that we're able to invest in more money into waste objectives. And we talk about 2.3 million additional spending in transport. Again, another grant from government that's not found from the local council tax base. And when we consider about the local council tax base, we talk about the 4.75% and that 0.24%. Councillor Long reminded me that I did a bit of analysis on what that would mean. There's around about 69% of our properties in Torbay that are in bands A to D. A to C. They will save on average, now don't get too excited if you're in those bands, £3 a year. So I can't wait to find out how those residents are going to be spending their extra 6p a week. Then I thought, well, let's have a look at band H, the highest band you can get. There's 137 properties that are in Band H. They are going to have to scratch their heads and work out how they're going to spend their 15p a week gain by that 0.24%. If you actually accumulate that saving, which is negligible to most people, but cumulatively across the 4-year term of this administration, if they continue that policy, it will be something like £2 million lost to the base budget of Torbay Council. And I recall members opposite, some of the colleagues opposite, absolutely vilifying the former mayor for freezing council tax because it would impact on the base budget. That's what's happening here in Torbay. I do welcome some of the changes in the budget. Of course I do. I welcome some of the increased investment that's made available into Swissco, made possible by the fact that we got rid of Tor 2 during our administration. Making sure that we can invest in our fleet and other, which we started between 2019 and 23. You will be amazed if I didn't refer to the fact that I'm delighted at long last that investment in sport is now in base budget. It's something that we started to do between 2019 and 2023, and I've always had that ambition to see it in the base so we don't have to go through the lottery every year of finding out. And as Councillor Thomas alluded to, it does help sport in Torbay plan for the future. I also welcome the fact that the original proposals that had sports fees going up 15% are now back in line with all the other fee increases of around 3 to 3.5%. I was delighted that the administration adopted the overview and scrutiny recommendation that we kick-start the funding into play parks with a fund of 500,000. And I was also pleased that they took on board the recognition that the increase in the council tax base allows for 1.2 million to support housing initiatives. One of the things that did come as a surprise to me in the budget was the £200,000 for the Community Ward Fund, building on that fantastic legacy of making Melville marvellous. It was a bit of an obsession of mine from the time that I was involved in Melville from 2011, having that report, Making Melville Marvellous, published, and eventually leading to £100,000, in fact it was over £100,000, that we invested working with the community and partners to develop a much stronger sense of community cohesion. That is now leveraging in other money and investment into some of the public realm projects. That £200,000, and I've discussed this with Councillor Timon, and I value him sharing his thoughts with me on this. Actually, if we invest it well, we will have more Melvilles with longer lasting legacies in other parts of Torbay. I'd like to quickly move through to the capital programme. And I've made this point elsewhere. The fact that we're showing a capital programme, I think it was of £33 million, actually doesn't really float your boat that high, because that is only the ones that have been proved and with the business case and been signed off for actual delivery. It hides and doesn't show all of the other capital programmes that we need to make sure that are in front of us. And I'm not just talking about those big flagship ones like Tor Marine and Crossways and Victoria Square. I'm talking about some of those smaller ones. There is no money in the capital programme indicated for investment, for example, in car parks. There is no money indicated for investment in sports facilities. All very well having 75 grand in the base to encourage people to get out there and be active, but if they haven't got decent changing rooms and facilities, then they're not going to continue their participation in sport. So we have to redress that, and we have to build on investing capital money into our infrastructure to get people out there, get them healthy, he says. So I would say that the Brighter Bay initiatives, it builds on the investment that we started to put in a premier resort, making Torbay that premier resort. And I think that's even more telling now as we try to sell Torbay as a very strong functioning, effective, unitary authority that we don't want to see swallowed up in the future. So we will be discussing one or two amendments, relatively small, which I think are affordable in delivery in due course. But I thank you, Madam Mayor, for the time.
Thank you, Councillor Cow. We have received 2 notice of motions to amend the Cabinet's revenue budget proposals, and these have all been circulated. Councillor Long, are you happy to put your motion to the Council as read?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm happy to table the motion. Just say a very brief proposing of it. Very recently, Ed Davey MP came to visit Devon and included Torbay in that visit. And part of that visit was to see Health Watch. And shortly after that, after we'd finished speaking to Health Watch, a member of the public came up to see me and he mentioned to me that he was an older person with who had some care needs. And he mentioned that whilst in the rest of Devon, older people with care needs who have a carer are able to have someone on their bus pass so that their carer can travel with them. And it does lead to a slightly perverse situation where it also hits Torbay economically, because someone, say, living in Newton Abbot who has a carer could travel on the bus with their carer to Torquay, for example, but when they do the return journey, the carer would have to pay. And so that has a knock-on effect of hitting us economically, potentially. It's also a hindrance to independence for that older person if it means that if their carer is unable to afford to go on the bus very much, it also hits that older person's independence as well. And the second part of the amendment is also, and this has been done in the past by this council, and Councillor Law, if she was able to be here, would mention this, would also allow young carers to travel by bus during the summer holidays. So it's, I know that this is something that the council, I understand when I was talking to officers about it, is something that's being thought about, but this would allow it to be kick-started straight away and stop the disparity between Torbay and the rest of Devon and enable our older people to get out and about much more. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Cow?
I rise to a second and reserve my voice, my right.
Thank you. I now invite debate on the amendment. Councillor Billings?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Long, you touched on an important matter. The principle of trying to provide this service, there's no disagreement on. But it's disappointing that the suggestion, which is a valid one, didn't come forward through the priority and resources or the overview and scrutiny process. This administration's tried to incorporate lots of recommendations that have come forward, and for example, we're now providing £500,000 for play parks, which is something in my portfolio area. We've responded to those, and we could have discussed this in greater length had it come forward then. The reason I say that is because this isn't about new money into bus services. This is about the promoters identifying an underspend this year, anticipating the underspend will continue next year, and then allocating the money in that underspend to a specific user group to expand concessionary travel. Unfortunately, that presupposes that the underspend next year is available. That's not correct, because the team and I had already been working on improving bus services in line with the bus service improvement plan. Group leaders, you'll have a presentation from me with some initial thoughts that I've offered to talk your groups through. And at the bottom of page 4, you will see that expanding provision for disabled people to enable them to use buses before 9:30 is anticipated to be funded through the underspend in concessionary travel. So let me repeat that for clarity for everyone. At the moment, if you're in Devon, you can take a companion passenger with you for some, not all, some people who qualify. In Devon, you can also use concessionary travel before 9:30. Your amendment addresses one of those, but not the other. Now, the recommendation from myself and the team is that we actually address making disabled persons able to travel before 9:30 as the priority. Why? Because that definitely serves people in Torbay, and it also enables them to access important employment opportunities. We're moving towards a combined county authority over the next 2 years. This will all be being done centrally. By trying to provide for the proportion, and it's not all, the proportion of those disabled people that qualify for a companion pass, we'll need to create an infrastructure that we don't already have. But within the next 2 years, we'll be having to work more with Devon anyway through the combined county authority. So that doesn't seem justified, in my view. Equally, at the moment, the companion passenger setup is fully implemented in Devon. Our primary care trust has a catchment of almost double the population of Torbay. It's about 270,000 compared to 140. And the main hospital for outpatient appointments is in Torbay. So it's more likely, I would suggest, that in year 1, this service will be used by those in Devon County travelling to Torbay than those in Torbay. And why is that relevant? Because when the way subsidised concessionary travel works, it's the area where you board a bus that pays. So if we introduce this change, as you've recommended in your amendment, Torbay will be paying for an established network of companions from Devon travelling back to Devon from Torbay.
You've got 30 seconds, Councillor Billings.
Whereas we won't have that established network in Torbay. So I would recommend, colleagues, we reject this amendment and allow myself as the Cabinet member and the team to use the available money to make available travel through the concessionary fares for disabled people, for those travelling before 9:30. And then let us address this issue subsequently on a cross-party basis. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Billings. Councillor Steve Darling.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor, for letting me speak. And may I first of all encourage Councillor Billings to put right where I believe that he may have inadvertently misled the council, because I have friends, I use a bus pass for people with disabilities, and I have a friend who lives in Newton Abbot. I know that's hard to believe that I do have a friend, but I do. He regularly waits, and he has a disabled pass, and he regularly waits until 9:30 in the morning until he gets on the bus. So, Councillor Billings, can you please correct yourself, because I think you are misleading the meeting. I'll be asking the same for another councillor before the end of this meeting as well. So please reflect, otherwise you'll be taken to task over this outside of this meeting, because we need to stamp out misleading colleagues at meetings, and I'm really hot on that, Madam Mayor, but as I know you are yourself. Coming to the main point here, I was reflecting a few weeks ago about why, my new role and what it's all about, and actually what politicians are about, whether they're the MP or whether what we are. We are about giving people agency. letting people take control of their lives. And it sounds really positive, what Councillor Billings was saying for people with disabilities about being able to travel before 9:30, but equally, it's extremely important that we help those people who need carers, because that will stop loneliness. And that ability to get out and actually engage in society is extremely important. And I'm just really worried that yet again we're seeing this Conservative administration behaving like a dog in a manger and saying, not invented here syndrome, and refusing. Is it really that difficult to actually back those people who have difficulty going out on their own? You're effectively, as Conservatives, slamming the door in their face and making them stay at home. And if you choose to vote against this, just think about those people who need carers to leave their homes, and you will be making them stay at home, whereas we could take a bold step forward and help people enhance their lives and take agency over their own lives. Why would you choose to do that?
Point of personal explanation, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Billings.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm sure Councillor Darling is right. I'm sure he does have a friend in Newton Abbot who has to wait until after 9:30. The point is, Councillor, the majority of bus services, because the majority are on rural areas, as I understand it, and if it's a minority, fine, but it's certainly a large proportion of bus services in Devon allow you to travel before 9:30. The reason I understand that to be the case is because in rural areas the service is so infrequent that if you could only travel after 9:30, you might have to wait a very extended period. Newton Abbot's a more urban part of Devon as a whole, so I didn't say all, or at least if I did, I'll correct that, Madam Mayor, but it's the way it's been explained to me by the team who are working with the Combined County Authority, who already provide this within Devon. It's the majority. I don't need to correct that any further. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Bye.
Thank you so much. And Madam Mayor, as everyone knows, I don't have any friends in Newton Abbot or anywhere else either. And I'm trying to follow Councillor Billings, who has a better grasp of detail. The issue, as I understand it, this amendment, is it may not provide enough money that's actually needed for what you want to do. So the difficulty of accepting an amendment for one-off money for something that we want to continue to do year on year is it might not sort the issue. We had a visit this morning from Mark Riddell, reviewing progress in what we're doing for young people in care and care experienced young people, and he came forward with a suggestion, and other areas now are providing care experienced young people with bus passes, and that's something I would very, very much like to see put in place. So let's kind of calm it all down and take this away and do what we want to do. It is an historic anomaly. I didn't appreciate that actually Torbay, and it was a couple of years ago when someone brought this to my attention, that we don't provide the free bus transport for carers for disabled people as they do in the rest of Devon. I think we have a better bus service than in many parts of Devon. So we do need to do better, we need to improve, but just simply taking an amendment for a one-off sum of money isn't going to solve the issue, and we don't know what that money is, and it's incredibly complicated. I'm not quite sure it's as complicated, with all due respect, as Councillor Billings made it sound complicated just now, but it is complicated, and it's better that we sort it out rationally. I'm not going to vote for the amendment, but we are going to sort the problem for you.
Thank you. Is there any further debate? Councillor Timon?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Picking up, I think, on the theme, I do feel that we try in this administration to be certain of our facts before we make changes in what we do, changes in policy. Elements of the budget, things like the play parks, when it came up through scrutiny, gave us time to investigate, to talk to officers, to see what that amount of money could achieve. it is very difficult to make changes to the budget when you haven't had time to cost them through if you're going to continue to run a council in a secure financial way. So I would suggest you leave us to work through what we can do, what we should do, and that we don't just jump into an amendment until we've investigated the aspects to it that are needed to make sure, A, it is affordable, which our officers are not yet able to tell us, B, that we actually can provide the administration to make it happen in a rounded, sensible way, and that what we end up with dovetails in where we need to end up with as a joint policy with the CCA, so that it's a common thing across Devon. There's going to be a lot of that, I think, over the next year or two in bringing things into line, both because of local government reorganisation probabilities and because of the CCA. We need to work through those properly and get to the right results. We will look at it. We will see what it makes sense to do. I can't say at the moment whether this is affordable or sensible or not, frankly.
Okay, if there's no further debate, Councillor Cowell. Oh, Councillor Mandy Darling.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I wasn't going to say anything, but I think I just ought to. Working for a charity that supports disabled people and also works closely with bus companies, I do want to make it clear that we advise all our clients from the information that we are told and regularly updated that travel prior to 9:30 is not permitted at all when using your bus pass. And to date, we have had no further notifications that this has changed, and this is right across the county of Devon. Thank you.
Councillor Cowell? Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In terms of the process, for those who don't appreciate, the final budget proposals are published and we have the first sight of those final budget proposals at the same time, if not slightly after, the press and the members of public. But we certainly have them within that same sort of 24 hours. We then arrange a process with officers, senior officers, including the 151 officer, to identify what amendments we may wish to put forward. Whatever amendments we put forward have to balance. So if you're going to put 100k in somewhere, you need to know where you're going to take the 100k out from. And we identified the £275,000 underspend within this current financial year, and the expectation, based on the fact that we put in £200,000 in with the previous year, the base budget was increased by 200k last year. We didn't need to do that, it turns out. So we're actually just allocating that 100k. These proposals were vetted and scrutinised, if you like, by senior officers. They're not written on the back of a fag packet by Councillor Long and myself or any other opposition member. They go through that process. And we actually asked officers to confirm that that was a viable source of our amendment. We also asked them for one or two others, including around public health. And the Director for Public Health, seeing as I'm mentioning all of the names of directors so far tonight, broke out into a cold sweat and said, we can't fund that. That is when we identified the concessionary fares as a more appropriate source to fund this. It's disappointing that we don't necessarily have the time between the announcement of the budget, the amendment process. The amendments had to be in by 4 o'clock on Monday. We met with officers last Thursday, so there isn't that space to do it because of the way it's compressed in the budget process. But it's not uncommon for councils to take on board amendments that come through the budget meeting itself. It's happened in other authorities, it's happened in the past in this authority. We recognise that the overview and scrutiny process adopted some of those amendments, but this idea came forward after that process. So it's quite a late addition, and it's something that we as an opposition partnership wanted to actually implement as soon as possible within this budget process. We know that how the numbers stack up, and we know that, clearly from the speakers so far tonight, that this will be voted down on a recorded vote. But just remember, your vote against concessionary fare for this group of people will be on public record. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Long, do you wish to reply?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I'd like to respond to a couple of items. And I think Councillor Billings' reference to priority and resources was absolutely valid, but that's one of the problems with having the priorities and resources sessions so early on this occasion. That took place in December, which was earlier than in previous years. And this issue came to light in February. So I think perhaps in later years it might be beneficial for priorities and resources to be starting in January like it used to happen in previous years, and perhaps a bit more extensively as well. I'd just like to reiterate what Councillor Cowell mentioned, that this process did involve meetings with officers, and there was a lot of to and fro over where the money could come from. And in fact, I remember a conversation where we were advised that the 100,000 would be more than enough. So there seems to be some confusion over that amount of money, and that was officers advising us that amount of money was would be sufficient. I know that members opposite were trying to be reassuring, but there were no timescales over when the administration's proposals could come through. And I do have a slight concern about relying on the CCA. Given what's happening with local government reform and devolution, the CCA may not be around for much longer. It might be a different body that's in place. And so whether or not proposal that they're developing might be binned whilst a new body takes over, such as a Devon-wide one or a more strategic authority. There could be a lot of wasted time and wasted effort when we could be getting on with it now. And there was also a reference to allowing people to go for employment. Given that at least half of this was for people who qualify for the older person's bus pass, who are have disabled issues, I don't imagine many of that cohort will necessarily be going for employment, and also by delaying it, it's going to be another year or 2 years or longer of people being left at home, and loneliness, according to Age
personal explanation, Madam Mayor.
According to Age UK, and I didn't name anyone, according to Age UK, loneliness is often worse than smoking. This will help tackle that. So I do urge people to, colleagues from all around the chamber, to vote in favour of this amendment, which we have had assurances is costed. Thank you.
Councillor Billings, I didn't hear your name being mentioned, so can you please explain your point of personal explanation?
I might have used the wrong term, Madam Mayor, but my understanding in the standing orders there was provision for clarification if something that a councillor said might have been misunderstood in subsequent debate.
So, Madam Mayor, if I may, to assist members, a personal explanation may only relate to Personal explanation may only relate to some statement by or a material fact relating to the member which may appear to have been misunderstood in the present debate. So that is the clarification of the standing orders. Thank you, Madam Mayor. So thank you, Madam Mayor. I think it's that boundary between what is a point of order and a point of personal explanation. So just to clarify, then I think it's helpful for me to do the point of order also. And this is where maybe Councillor Billing, to which you're alluding to, it says a point of order may only relate to an alleged breach of the Council's standing order, a significant factual inaccuracy or a breach of law, and that the member must indicate the standing order they allege the significant factual inaccuracy or the law to which they refer as being broken before further speaking.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Billings. Councillor David Thomas, do you wish to reply?
Thank you very much indeed. Yes, I do wish to reply, and I will thank Councillor Long and Cowell for the amendment. It's quite interesting, Councillor Long, that I recall that the priorities and resources last year, which were in January, this time last year, they were too late. This year we brought them forward, and surprisingly this year they're too early. So I think we need to work harder to ensure that we get the sweet spot, which may be December the 27th. I don't know, but we 25th. Okay, but we need to work on that. What I would say is, we won't support the amendment. However, the principle is something that we do not disagree with. In fact, you will recall that we spoke about this at the overview and scrutiny meeting, or at least I didn't. Councillor Billings spoke about this at the overview and scrutiny meeting. I know certainly I have had conversations with disability groups across Torbay and heard the reasoning behind this, which I absolutely endorse. We've had conversations with the learning disabilities ambassadors as well, and again, with the greatest respect, this is we're kind of happy to take this forward because of the previous conversations that we've had, and not because the MP, Mr. Davey, turned up last week. This is something that we've had on the radar for a little while. So we will actually be voting against it. However,
point of order.
Thank you, Councillor Darling. I'll take it just in a moment. Councillor Thomas, you've got 3 minutes left.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm not going to take all of the time. But it is, as I say, it is a principle that we do not disagree on, and I am confident that with the work that Councillor Billings is doing, that we will provide the solution that fits within the budget that we've got. Yeah, I'll leave it there. Thank you very much indeed.
Councillor Steve Darling, what was the point of order?
Factual inaccuracy. I'm not aware of Ed Davey being here last week. Thank you.
Thank you. I will now take a recorded vote on the amendment.
Members, when I call your name, please indicate how you wish to vote on the amendment. Councillor Emile.
For.
Councillor Billings.
Against.
Councillor Brooke.
Against.
Councillor Bryant.
Against.
Councillor Bye.
Against.
Councillor Carter.
For.
Councillor Cal.
For.
Councillor George Darling.
For.
Councillor Mandy Darling. Councillor Steve Darling.
For.
Councillor Douglas Dunbar.
For.
Councillor Fellows.
Against.
Councillor Foster.
Against.
Councillor Fox. Councillor Hutchins. Councillor Johns.
For.
Councillor Barbara Lewis.
Against.
Councillor Chris Lewis.
Against.
Councillor Long.
For.
Councillor Madison. Councillor Penny.
For.
Councillor Pentney.
For.
Councillor Spigania.
Against.
Councillor Stevens.
Against.
Councillor Strang.
Against.
Councillor David Thomas.
Against.
Councillor Jacqueline Thomas.
Against.
Councillor Tolshard. Councillor Tranter.
Against.
Councillor Twelves.
Against.
Councillor Tyman. Councillor Verdi.
For.
Madam Mayor, there were 14 votes for, 18 against. The amendment is therefore lost.
The amendment is lost. Therefore, the original motion is before members for consideration. Is Councillor Long happy to put his motion to the Council as read?
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor, with just an incredibly brief introduction. And this item was raised with me by Councillor Steve Darling, who still has his one friend in Newton Abbot, and so he may add some more detail to this later. People's Parkfield are in the process of looking at having some public toilet facilities in the vicinity of that building, and the purpose of this amendment was to help kickstart that process and, if nothing else, to provide some temporary facilities in the interim whilst they pursue that. And of course, with the much hoped for increased community usage around the Parkfield building, the need for this facility will be much needed. And so essentially this process will help kickstart that and provide a much needed solution to a need. So very simple. We had initially thought about taking this out of capital, but as we had discussions amongst ourselves and with council officers as the previous item, we decided to go for what has been proposed from the revenue budget. Many thanks, Madam Mayor.
Is there a seconder?
I rise to second and reserve my right.
Thank you. I now invite debate on the amendment. Councillor Chris Lewis.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much indeed, Madam Mayor. And of course, we all support Parkfield, New Parkfield and Parkfield House. I think they've done a superb job. And I was there only yesterday for the Preston Community Partnership, where I spoke to the people from People's Parkfield and clearly discussed this with them. I only found out, of course, the motion on Monday afternoon when the motions came forward. And I think we all agree that it would be beneficial for them to have toilets on site. They haven't done so for some time. Previous administration didn't feel fit to put them there. I thought that it wasn't a problem. Clearly it is a problem, and therefore we need to resolve it. And we need to resolve it in the short term, which is within the next few weeks. We need to sort it out in the medium term and in the long term. As we all know, the school is moving into the new Parkfield building. We possibly be able to find a solution there, but that will be a long-term solution. I spoke to People's Parkfield about what they would do. There's been some vandalism there. They put up scaffolding around the house. People managed to get onto the roof. It's a difficult place. And if you put portaloos there, I think they may be damaged and it might be a problem doing that. Therefore, I spoke to the people at People's Parkfield to try and find a solution. They're going to try and find a solution. Once they've found a solution, a short-term solution, they will report back to me, and we will have that debate of how we can do it. We're not prepared to take... they could put in facil money. Developers' contribution, as you quite rightly say, much better coming from the community. As for the community fund, when I explained what the community fund was for, most deprived areas, helping people in those areas most in need, they believe that we should actually try and find money from elsewhere, either from the council or from a SIL application, but from somewhere else. We will be voting against this, not because we don't believe that toilets should be there, but because we need to, it's not a question of doing it in the back of an envelope. We only found out on Monday. We need to work the solution up, speaking to people's park fields. And that's exactly what we're going to do and how we should do it. It is a shame that others hadn't spoken to me as the ward councillor as well, because that may have resolved it. But we are going to resolve it. We're committed to doing so. And it's quite helpful putting the motion down there so I can speak at this debate and say that we're supportive of putting toilets for the short term, the medium and the long term. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Lewis. Councillor Steve Darling.
Sorry, Madam Mayor. Thank you for calling me, first of all. I think it is very sad that Councillor Lewis C is blaming People's Parkfield for not talking to him in advance of this meeting. It's a great pity that people ought to be alive to what's going on in their wards, and it is incumbent on you, Councillor Lewis, as a ward councillor, to know if there are problems. I visited People's Parkfield a couple of Mondays ago, and this was told to me as a significant challenge for them. The reality is this is £15,000 in a millions and millions of pounds budget, and we, as the council, are saying there's a bag of cash for the cabinet to put to good use, and then there's some money that there's a clear way forward for it. The way that you actually choose to deliver that is within cabinet's gift. It's not as if you have to spend it all. If you find another route, that's fine. But at least there's a backstop. But backstops are somewhat out of fashion, I think, in our world now. And to turn this down would be very, very short-sighted, for want of a better phrase. My real concern is there is a real challenge here. Kicking the can down the road is very sad, particularly when it's your own ward that you're doing it in. So I would encourage us to say, we know there is an issue. I spoke to People's Parkfield. I was saying, what about having a coffee stand here so you get greater footfall? And they said, oh no, nobody would want to do that because there's no toilet here. If you choose to invest in your community, then actually you get more people turning up and engaging there. You get greater footfall because there are toilet facilities there. So actually it becomes a virtuous circle. So rather than kicking the can down the lane, let's actually invest in our young people, invest in Parkfield, and have confidence in the future for Parkfield. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Steve Darling. Any further debate on the amendments? Okay, Councillor Cow, you reserved your right.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Sounds like People's Parkfield must have been really busy talking to members of Torbay Council, because I've had long conversations with the manager at People's Parkfield and made some suggestions, including liaising with Swissco and Neil Coysh and others to explore what those temporary facilities could look like. It has been an ongoing issue. It's been an ongoing issue ever since the My Place facility effectively was shut to the young people of Paynton and beyond. This is a short-term fix. One of the key things I said to him is I wouldn't actually go for a SIL application for something that's temporary, because part of the reason that you would use a community fund for SIL is because it's a long-term investment within that project. I would come back for that SIL application, the community element of the SIL, once you have that long-term project. And the other conundrum within all of this is all very dependent on People's Parkfield actually ending up with the lease for New Parkfield. Currently, those negotiations have only just started, and they're beginning to move forward. There's a lot of complexities around the school of Mayfield going into Parkfield that need to be unravelled. So it's not a given that they would automatically have access to the services in New Parkfield. Old Parkfield is too far away from the facilities in terms of the BMX track and the skate park. The young people of Paynton have been denied access already to their skate park in Paynton. This would just actually, for a relatively small amount of money, up to £20,000, allocated to support the provision of temporary facilities. If you look at that Section 106 pot, and this is beginning to really rile me now, there is lots of money there that is so historic that a lot of those developers that actually had those legal agreements awarded as part of their planning conditions and their legal arrangement with their 106 conditions that no longer exist. I wanted to have a look at those 106 applications myself. I have asked for that information on more than one occasion, and I've still been denied access to that information. It should be publicly available. It should be on the website. It's not. It hasn't been for years, and that wrong has to be put right. So I will have to do what I've done in previous times, submit a freedom of information to get the information that our residents are actually legally entitled to. I think it would be easy for us to identify that £20,000. We may not end up spending it because they may fund it in a different way, but it's just to give them that opportunity to actually say, we've got a fallback position. And yet again, regrettably, it's going to be denied to them. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Long, do you wish to reply?
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. And can I start off by making an apology to the council? I inadvertently gave Councillor Darling S the wrong figure. We had initially talked about £15,000 being enough, but then we upped it to 20 as a backstop, and I inadvertently gave the wrong figure, so it was my fault. And it's not that hard to make an apology for getting something wrong. Other people should do it more often. I have to say that this administration's been in power for nearly 2 years now, and I think it's probably about time to own the decisions that you're making and stop harking back to the previous administration. It's probably wearing a bit thin by now, and it is telling that the cabinet member and the ward councillor wasn't aware of this as an issue when lots of people on the other side were aware of it. It's a bit odd. Again, just to confirm that this has been through conversations with officers, and on their advice we got to where we are. So again, lots of safeguards in this amendment and helping this community project get over the line, and this could be actioned now rather than having to wait. So I urge colleagues to vote in favour. Thank you.
Councillor David Thomas, do you wish to reply?
Oops, thank you very much indeed. And I'm delighted that Councillor Long was able to update Councillor Darling on the actual money, the amount of money we're talking about this evening. And I do want to put today's date down in my diary, because today is the first time I've actually heard Councillor Darling wanting to support a scheme in Preston against some of the more deprived communities. Because the reality is, the money that is allocated here is to come from the brand new community grant fund that we wish to set up. It's £200,000, the community grant fund that we wish to set. It is designed to be spent on those areas within our community that are in the topmost 10%. That's why we've put it there. And at the first opportunity, there's a request to move it from there. And that really does surprise me. And actually disappoints me, to be honest. But let's just go back to the first part of
Sorry, Councillor Thomas, 1 second. Councillor Steve Darling, I'll let Councillor Thomas finish and I'll come to you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Let's go to the first part of the proposal, which talks about the money coming from Section 106 agreements. So Section 106 agreements are planning contributions and are a legal agreement between the council and the particular developer. I do not believe that the budget that we have in play this evening is the right place for council, full council, to try to determine where Section 106 payments, which, as I say, are a legal agreement, to be determined. Look, at the end of the day, this is another one that we more than, the outcomes that we want here are for People's Park Field to actually work with a park field. This is not just about the toilets. This is a much bigger issue. It's about how the whole of the site operates. Those meetings of all of the stakeholders, certainly, where are we now? Last night, so 2 days ago, was the latest meeting, and we, Chris and I, sorry, Councillor Lewis and I had an update last night that they are absolutely progressing well. Look, I don't wish to take any more time because time is running on, but we will not be supporting this amendment.
I will now take a recorded vote on the amendment. Oh, sorry, Councillor Steve Darling. Your point of personal explanation?
Yes, my point of personal explanation is that I'm concerned that the leader of the local authority is willfully misleading people by his statements, and I would ask for him to apologise and withdraw them by suggesting that I have not sought investment in Preston before. I would point towards the investment that we've seen with the tennis courts at Oldway Mansion, also the festoon lighting along Preston, on my watch as leader of the local authority. The reality is, of course, Madam Mayor, that young people don't say, that's in Preston, I'm not going there, if they live in Roundham with Hyde, which has high levels of deprivation. They would very happily walk a few yards.
Sorry, Councillor Darling, thank you for making your point of personal explanation, but it's moving into further debate now.
It's a pleasure. Thank you. If I may directly respond through you, just to offer the apology. I was asked for an apology. If through you, Madam Mayor, you believe that I have tried to mislead the council, I'm more than happy to apologise.
Councillor David Thomas, would you like to apologise?
Of course, no problem at all. So if Councillor Darling believes that I am trying to mislead the council with my statement, I apologise. Thank you.
I will now take the vote, a recorded vote, on the amendment.
Members, when I call your name, please indicate how you wish to vote on this amendment. Councillor Emile.
For.
Councillor Billings.
Against.
Councillor Brooke.
Against.
Councillor Bryant.
Against.
Councillor Bye.
Against.
Councillor Carter.
For.
Councillor Cowell.
For.
Councillor George Darling.
For.
Councillor Mandy Darling. For. Councillor Steve Darling.
For.
Councillor Douglas Dunbar.
For.
Councillor Fellows.
Against.
Councillor Foster.
Against.
Councillor Fox. For. Councillor Hutchins. I don't believe Councillor Johns has come back into the chamber, has she? So absent. Councillor Barbara Lewis.
Against.
Councillor Chris Lewis.
Against.
Councillor Long.
For.
Councillor Madison. For. Councillor Penny.
For.
Councillor Pentney.
For.
Councillor Spagagna.
Against.
Councillor Stevens.
Against.
Councillor Strang.
Against.
Councillor David Thomas.
Against.
Councillor Jacqueline Thomas.
Against.
Councillor Tolshard. Councillor Tranter.
Against.
Councillor Twelves.
Against.
Councillor Tyman. Councillor Verdi.
For.
Shall I take her? Because she's just walked back in now. Councillor Johns, we were just coming to the end of the recorded vote as you walked back in. Would you like to indicate how you wish to vote? Madam Mayor, there were 14 votes for and 18 against. The amendment is therefore lost.
The amendment is lost. Therefore, the original motion is before members for consideration. I now invite debate. Councillor Chris Lewis.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor, and it's taken quite a while to get here, but we are here. And I would like to say congratulations to Councillor Dave Thomas and Councillor Alan Tyman on my right for doing such an excellent budget today and over the past 2 years. No cuts, keeping council tax rise down as promised, and helping those most needy in the Bay. So well done. But I want to talk about the capital budget and the capital projects rather than the revenue budget. And it is a really good news story. One of the most ambitious capital programmes that Torbay has ever seen. And actually one of the biggest, I think, in Devon, if not in the country, for a small authority like Torbay. We promised to deliver. Again, it's in the manifesto. We are delivering, and we're delivering with the help of our partners, Wilmot Dixon and Milligan, and of course with our Director of Economic Regeneration, David Carter and his team. So if I start off with Torquay, Union Square, it's coming to planning at the end of March, providing housing, large area for the NHS, making a real change to the top end of Torquay. One that was in the plan, was in the mayoral vision all those years ago. If only we'd stuck with that one. And then we come on to the pavilion. People said, oh, you'll never get it back. You never get it back for that sort of money. We did get it back. It's now in the hands of Torbay Council. And we've got people in there as we speak. Well, it's gone on for so long, they've probably gone home by now. But we have got the inspectors into the pavilion to see what needs to be done, what needs to be done to make it wind and watertight and to make it ongoing for to really change that area. The Debenham site, when we inherited the Debenham site, it was for 14 units that didn't stack up. It was over £10 million. So we decided, right, other properties came up nearby. Let's expand it. Let's try and do it from the whole area, from Debenhams up to Hoopers. And that's what our partners are looking at now. And we're hoping that before long, we will have a plan that goes to our planning committee. The Strand delivered. Okay, we've had a few hiccups along the way, but the Strand is delivering. It's no longer a bus terminal and a nasty place to go to. we found that out, Councillor Thomas, with the Bay of Lights. Hundreds, thousands of people taking advantage of the Strand as it is today rather than that bus terminal. Delivering for the people of Torquay, delivering for the people of Torbay. Now I come on to Paynton. Victoria Square. Yes, we've cleared the site and we've put parking in, but we're doing a major defence for Paynton and Preston, losing parking. So we need the parking while we come up with a scheme that is taking shape, and hopefully we will be able to share with you once it's ready to be shared. The flood defence starting in September, £17.5 million, transforming the seafront of Paynton and Preston. Old Way, after years of neglect, Old Ways, the scaffolding is about to go up to again make it wind and watertight. We've waited years for that, but we're delivering on Old Way. We've got 8 million from the previous government, and of course Torbay Council have put in £1 million. Crossways, it didn't stack up when we took over. Our partners are working on it, and I'm hoping very soon that we will have exciting news on Crossways. Station Square, about to start, a £3 million project. The Picture House, working with the Trust to deliver one of the finest old cinemas in the country, delivering for the people of Paynton.
You've got 30 seconds remaining.
Delivering for Torbay. Brixham, the public realm, we've had consultation, that's about to take place. The fish market, 9.8 million to expand the fish market. Brixham car park, we've waited over 20 years. We're finding the money for that, we're going to deliver. Councillor Thomas and I went to the Chamber of Commerce and told them that the other day. We're going to deliver for the people of Brixham. We're going to deliver for the people of Torbay. Over £200 million capital fund. We're delivering. You're going to tell me to shut up, Councillor? Well, no, that's a bit rude. I'm finished. We are delivering. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chris Lewis. Councillor Steve Darling.
Thank you. So, without qualification, that apology, by the way, I think the fact of the matter is that across this chamber, the little speech that we just heard from Councillor Lewis C, as far as the delivery of those outcomes, we would all agree. Actually, the vast majority of them were on our books. So, you know, and this is why the partnership with Milligan and Wilmot Dixon are happy to work with us, because across the chamber, whilst there may be some issues about how we get to the destination, we might have done something a bit differently over there or over here, but the reality is we are as one with our ambition for our communities in Torbay in our built environment, and looking to see those projects over the line is something that we can have unanimity on and be proud of. However, you know, and the investors are really pleased that, you know, when I meet with them, I say yes, this side, and when Councillor Long meets with them, this side of the chamber, we know we are on target, we are supporting these. So I think it's important that we get that out there first. I am concerned that there has been a factual inaccuracy from the leader of the local authority, and I hope we will not have an another qualified apology for him in a moment. Councillor Thomas said that there were no cuts to services for Torbay Council, and yet there are cuts to services. At this meeting, he said there were no cuts to services that people would be receiving. But I have had an email from our library services that said because the local authority failed to cover the cost of the national insurance increases for the people who provide our library services, there sadly will be cuts to staffing and the cuts to the services provided to our people of Torbay. Now, we may well have the dancing on the head of a pin saying, oh, but that's given by a third party, so it's not really a cut to council services. It will be a cut to people who enjoy crossing the threshold of our libraries. So I hope Councillor Thomas will actually correct himself of what the rhetoric he's been given out, both on television and in this chamber, because there is a cut to our services, to our library services. The key area that I wanted to focus on is perhaps the biggest wicked issue in Torbay, which is the desperate need for affordable housing. Councillor Long quite rightly highlighted latest government figures that we had 40 rough sleepers. And for many years, I've been going out meeting rough sleepers at stupid o'clock, and I am really sad that we have these numbers. It was the first thing I campaigned on as a young Liberal, was rough sleeping, and yet we've got the higher figures. And as I highlighted yesterday in the House of Commons, cuts to the supporting people budget and reinvesting in that, as well as investing in uniformed police officers, is the iron fist in the velvet glove that we need to drive positive change in our town centres, and particularly Castle Circus. And it's disappointing that this has not been grasped. I'm also very concerned because Councillor Nigel Penny earlier on highlighted Preston Down Road. I was speaking to the Housing Association, who shared with me that the local authority, by backing out of that deal with them, had effectively lost the local authority £1.5 million of money for social rented housing that would have come in to help drive the 50% social rented housing at that location. Those are people, so saying, oh, we've invested 1.2, well, actually, you're already down by 1.5 million.
Councillor Darling, you've got 30 seconds remaining.
Thank you so much, Madam Mayor, for reminding me of that. And I look forward to Councillor Thomas correcting himself and appearing on Spotlight to correct himself on then regarding the cuts that we are having due to them not covering the national insurance contributions in our libraries. Thank you so much, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Cowell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I wasn't going to speak, but after that fantastic speech from the Deputy Leader of the Council, illustrating all of these exciting projects that are about to be delivered, I said in my opening comments that these there was no capital programme, £33 million capital programme. So I thought I'd have a quick look. And we have Crossways, 665,000 in the capital programme for next year, then zero. Torbay, zero. Edgenswell Railway Station, zero. Brixham Square Public Realm, zero. Brixham Central Car Park, zero. Paynton Tech Park, zero. Brixham Port Infrastructure, you've guessed it, and the list goes on. And I've already talked about sport and others. So it's a bit disingenuous to say that I want to talk about the capital programme and then talk about things that aren't in the capital programme. You know, these are very disappointing. And this illustrates what a point I made earlier, the lack of transparency of what our actual capital programme looks like. So it's really disappointing that when you look at the 4-year plan for capital projects in Torbay, there's only 33 million. We know Union Square alone will be more than that. The Old Way's more than that. And the Crossways is going to be north of 20 million. The railway station's north of 20 million. You know, we're not actually selling ourselves as to what our ambition for our capital programme is. When anybody looks at this publicly available document, it's a disgrace. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Long.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. And I have to say, I feel like in this last section, I'm living in a parallel universe where a council tax rise turns out to be, according to Councillor Lewis, a lower council tax. I'm not quite sure how that works, where cuts are not cuts, but redesigned services, where we're told in previous meetings and questions to myself that a capital receipt from Parkfield would result in more affordable homes on brownfield sites, but Union Square is going to be delivering on current proposals a reduced number of homes compared to this side's proposals, and therefore a consequential reduction in affordable housing on that site. So a promise of more resulting in less. And in Paignton, where delivery is car parks being turned into car parks. So delivery is in fact not delivery. We could be living under a reform administration. Oh, we are. Thank you.
Councillor Billings.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, compared to a lot of other things that are going on elsewhere in the country, haven't we got a fantastic result with this budget? The national news tells me about councils trying to increase council tax by 25%. And yet in Torbay, we've got successes like Brighter Bay, where our final mile routes, the premier routes, the main areas that tourists coming into Torbay travel down, rather than cutting them every 6 weeks, we're now cutting them every fortnight. That's a step change in delivery for our tourism industry, making our area look as good as it possibly can, trying to allow our tourism industry to flourish to make our economy successful. 6 weeks to 2 weeks. That's the difference. Let's then take Torquay in Bloom. What a wonderful result we've achieved there, where Torquay in Bloom is now representing in the national finals of Britain in Bloom. That's as a result of the investment through Brighter Bay. That's as a result of budgets such as this one we've just heard about. Let's talk about enforcement, because it isn't just a case of making an area look better. It's about making it feel nicer. And were it not for the investment through Brighter Bay and enforcement, we'd still be taking 15 days to evict travellers, rather than doing that in as little last year as a day. Let's be clear, we couldn't have used the overflow car park at Goodrington for much needed car parking for the air show, but for the investment in enforcement through Brighter Bay. You're right, Councillor, and the change in legislation, but there was no mechanism to apply that changed legislation that had been in place for many years until Brighter Bay came forward. Madam Mayor, in relation to line painting, driving round our area, it looks nothing like it did previously, and I'm recalling questions in previous meetings where lots of councillors on the opposite side were asking me about line painting in their area. It's the Brighter Bay investment that's enabled that to be delivered, because in the absence of Brighter Bay, this investment that we've been bringing forward, we had no in-house line painting capacity. And then let me take the final fifth point, Madam Mayor, in relation to road maintenance, in particular fixing of potholes. That's a constant bugbear for lots of residents. I'm sure all councillors will agree. But bringing forward an alternative new way of working, which is more intelligent, that fixes the pothole next to the one that's already been fixed because it's there, because the guys are on site, prioritises those that are most important, for example, the ones in wheel tracks on 60-mile-an-hour routes, rather than simply saying, well, let's do the one that was first in the queue because it was reported the furthest time ago. It's enabling our area to be as good as it possibly can be. So I would recognise, members, we've had a bit of a discussion about adding a few extra services in. There's been clear agreement that those services are valuable and we're going to provide for them in an alternative way. But I would really commend this budget put forward. And for our friend in Newton Abbot, I'm quite happy in the interest of clarity to show them on the Devon County website where the circumstances they can use their bus pass before 9:30 if they live in Devon County. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Billings. Just a quick note, members, can we remember to respect each other when we're speaking? Thank you. Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So I'd like to speak to support this budget.
I think it's a really good budget, and I'd like to congratulate my colleagues for the work that's gone into it to make it happen. So when residents contact us over the last few years, certainly when they've contacted me, certainly when I was the previous councillor, what was the main thing I was getting in my inbox? Weeds in the gutters, grass verges not cut, lines not painted, leaves on the roads. It was just generally, as they walked down the streets, they were complaining it looked a mess, untidy and unkept. So I'd just like to say it's been such a big difference in recent months, and I welcome what has been put in the budget, certainly around the Brighter Bay, the extra money. And what struck my eye was where there's going to be these extra teams, and teams that can pick up on particular projects. So it could be bushes that are overgrown, it could be the autumn leaves. And I know certainly in Wellswood in the autumn there was a team going out, and that's all they were doing for the month of November was collecting the leaves on the roads and on the pavements and sweeping up. And it really did make such a big difference in Wellswood Ward, and I know it was across the whole of the bay. So instead of residents getting to me to complain, they were getting messages to me and emails to say how nice it looked and to appreciate. Could I please get thank yous to Swissco and the team for the work that is done. So I fully support this budget. I think the things in the budget are really going to see a difference, make a difference to Torbay, and that will improve it for the residents who live here, for the tourists who come here, for all of us as we go about our business, that we see we are driving up roads that are clean, we're seeing pavements that are clean, and it just makes it a better environment for everybody. So I fully support this budget.
Councillor Bye.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And follow on from my Wellswood colleague, I want to support this budget. I think the big picture is we're spending the net revenue budget 147.5 million. The bulk of that, and I think it surprises people, goes to protect and to support the most vulnerable in the community. So in excess of 60 million now goes on adult services, and we're proposing to spend 57 million just over on children's services. I want to speak a bit about that in a moment, but in the context that we're still managing to put out council tax bills in the Bay that are now about £200 less. So there's a discussion earlier about what a lower council tax bill might be. Our council tax bills are £200 less for a Band C property in Torquay and Paignton compared to Councillor Darling's friend in Newton Abbot, if he's living in a Band C, would be paying over £200 more. In Totnes, £220 more, £250 more in Totnes. And Somerset, not a loony left council by any means and not very far away, Somerset are proposing to increase their council tax for the coming year by 7.5%. They have dispensation from the government to make a much larger increase. So there's some talk about our levels of increase, but I think residents in the Bay are very pleased that we're going for less than the government's permitted amount. So we've charged less than other authorities. The increase is significantly less this year than some other authorities, and yet we're still investing in services for the most vulnerable. I have to say, we're investing in Churston Library and we're investing in Paignton Library, so there seems to be something there that I don't quite understand. I know how well the improvements in both those libraries have gone down with residents. But in children's services, absolutely, I want to celebrate the extra money that's now being made available for our Youth Justice Service. There was some question mark on some of the work we're doing to prevent young people from reoffending, for example. That can continue. The fantastic work of our family hubs. We are a trailblazer for family hubs. There was a question mark over whether that could continue because it was the previous government's initiative, but we have found the money, with support from the new government, to continue the great work that our family hubs are doing. They're really making a difference. There's 658,000 from Children's Services new preventative initiatives. And I'm very, very pleased indeed there's 150,000 in the budget to upgrade a family centre to enable family contact time in Paynton rather than for families to have to go over to Brixton, which isn't so convenient. And at last, and I know if Councillor Law were here, she'd be cheering, at last we're going to kit out, there's 160,000 for the Youth Justice Service contact centre to be here in the town centre in Torquay. And only today I hear from our Director of Children's Services and Director of Finance that we have put in our bid for the money for provision, to have our own provision for children's homes support within the Bay. So there's 150,000 in that budget, and extra money compared to the initial proposals to be match funding, and we've submitted our bid today. So fingers crossed that we'll get remainder, because a lot of authorities now are looking at providing accommodation for children in their own areas, in their own placements, and that absolutely is a huge, huge benefit for them compared to out-of-area placements. And the £500,000 for play parks. I was really, really pleased that the overview and scrutiny recommendation on the money for play parks has been accepted. So this is a good budget for children, it's a good budget for the vulnerable, it's a good budget for people in the Bay and business and investment, and also keeping the council tax much, much lower than in neighbouring authorities.
Thank you, Councillor By. Councillor Tranter.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will be brief due to my ever-increasing need for a comfort break. I just wanted to say how happy I am to see the extra 4.5 million towards adult social care, and just wanted to say that most of this money will be going towards to the NHS, with some of it going towards our transformation partner. Transformation is a focus for us, especially with increasing costs and the increasing adult social care needs of people, which is of course a national problem. This money will help to achieve better outcomes, health outcomes for our residents, and help people to stay independent and in their own homes for longer. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tranter. Councillor Brooke.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I'll just make a few words about the budget. One of the reasons I stood for election in 2023 was seeing Torbay and the English Riviera at a tipping point. Welsh businesses marketed the natural beauty, marvellous accommodation and attractions to entice the millions to holiday here and support the thousands of businesses and jobs. The maintenance of Torbay was declining, and the level of antisocial behaviour in our towns was increasing to such an extent that we were seeing regular anti-Torbay stories were hitting the media, almost nullifying our positive marketing. If these two storms weren't confronted and reduced their power, serious damage was going to be inflicted on the English Riviera and Torbay. May I remind colleagues that a 20% reduction in tourism could have a £100 million hit on the Bay. That's the equivalent to 67% of our budget, and could cause a potential 2,000 job loss for residents in Torbay. In our manifesto, we promised to tackle these issues. Today has been a beautiful day in Torbay, as a band of high pressure has moved in and pushed low pressure aside. Operation Brighter Torbay and Operation Town Centres have been...
Sorry, Councillor Brooke, just one moment. As I've said, I know everyone needs a bit of a break. We're getting there. Can we just please respect people whilst they're speaking? Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Brooke, you've got 3 minutes and 15 seconds remaining.
Operation Brighter Bay and Town Centres has been our high-pressure system to push back and weaken the negative effects of the poor maintenance and antisocial behaviour. They were only launched in April last year, but we have already seen significant improvement. Whilst I could say that's for Brixham and they had introduced a new team for cleaning, whilst I could say it's about the line marking, we got a new fantastic team that's done sterling work across the whole bay. Whilst I could say it's about the grass cutting that Councillor Adam Billings has mentioned, the greatest testimony to show that there's been a turnaround is that we're actually now getting positive national media coverage of the English Riviera. And also we're getting positive coverage on social media. I could read just one example. Just wanted to post to say myself and my girlfriend were on a little break in Dartmouth. We popped across to Paynton and Torquay yesterday. Torquay was exceptionally clean and tidy and so well kept. The area around the harbour was lovely and it found it completely different to a couple of larger towns back in Dorset like Weymouth and Bournemouth, which are becoming run down and dirty. Everyone should be proud to live there. That was written only 10 days ago. We have got so much to be proud of. We have got so much to shout loud. You may not know, 14 out of 15 of our beaches were awarded the excellent quality of water last year. We got 10 seaside awards. We got 6 blue flag awards last year. That put us in the top resort, not only in the UK, but in Europe. These are the things we can shout loud about. But for me, I want to see the rest of the bay looking good. Grass verges, line marking, town centres, a clean, safe Torbay that is the best in the West, where all residents are proud and are positive ambassadors. This budget goes further to bring that dream to a reality. We're only councillors for 4 years in this term. If my legacy for the English Riviera and Torbay is a turnaround on its maintenance and a turnaround on its antisocial behaviour, so the area can thrive and we can support our business, keep our residents secure and have an income in their pocket, I will be dead proud. And I'm very proud to commend this budget to all here. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Long, your point of order.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It was the point of order relating to factual inaccuracy from the previous speaker. So just for a couple of examples, in 2019, when the previous administration took over, the seafront lights were literally falling down. They were replaced. There was incredible investment into Swissco, hundreds of thousands of pounds, and new kit, which cleaned the area. And tourism infrastructure was renewed, such as around on our beaches. And extra working, I'm surprised the member didn't realise that the extra closer working with the ER bid company and budget sharing over events. And it led to the most improved council 2023. So there was all that, plus I'm afraid the water quality stuff, the kind of denial over the Southwest water situation, just completely financially and reality wrong. Thank you.
Thank you. If there's no more debate, Councillor Timon, you reserved your right.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I did. And it's a bit difficult to remember back to some of the notes I took when this discussion started, and speeches were given by our group leaders. But I'll just pick up on one or two things and try not to keep people too long. Putting together a budget for any council these days is difficult. For us, in some ways, I think it's been a lot less difficult than for many. And I certainly acknowledge what was said right at the beginning by Councillor Long, that Torbay had a good financial settlement. At least I think it was good compared with many other councils. And probably was good. But, and as we just heard in terms of library services, there are many pressures there because of the increases in national insurance. There are many pressures on many of our partners because of increases in minimum wage. I'm not saying that the minimum wage increases are wrong. I believe that's the right thing to do. I'm not sure I would agree that I know I wouldn't agree that the national insurance increases were the right thing to do. I found it a little bit disappointing, actually, that the situation in regards to library services and the fact there might be cuts had not been brought to my attention by anyone. And having quickly checked with my colleagues on this side, I don't believe it's been brought to our attention. And therefore, I don't think we've had a chance to consider whether there's anything we can do about it. And what I want to say is that, if I can continue, what I want to say is that we did put into this budget, that is in this budget, some money put aside because we know that some of our partners will be under real pressure. Our 151 officer and I took care that that happened within the budget. It's quite visible in there as one of the sums. There is some scope to help some of our partner organisations. I'm not saying that we are looking in any of those to pay all of the increases they're having to occur. But as far as I'm aware, no approach has been made, certainly to the Cabinet, and I believe to senior officers regarding that. There may have been some approach I don't know about within the Council, but it hasn't come to our attention. Therefore, I don't think it's fair to say that we are making cuts. There is a risk that they may have to cut those services, but let us look and see what we can do to come up with solutions. That's what we're going to have to do, not only with the library service, but with partners right across the Bay. We've put money aside because we know there'll be pressures in adult services, in care homes. We put money aside because we know there'll be very significant pressures because of national insurance in children's services. We're set up to try and deal with that. But, you know, if you meet people who say that, for goodness sake, talk to us. Get them to talk to us. We will see what we as a council can do to help. I'll pick up on one or two other things. One mentioned at one stage was the council tax support, and that what we've done on council tax we could have put it into helping those with extra council tax support. Under the last administration, and previous to that, under the previous administration, the maximum that people support could get was 70%. It's now been changed by this administration to 75%, and I'm happy to acknowledge that the previous administration set up the consultation that gave us the ability to allow that to happen. I believe that the previous administration had managed the council's finances well. I believe we are continuing to manage them well. I find it disappointing there is so much flack being shown about.
You've got 30 seconds left.
Shown about on what I think has been a good last 4 years financially and is a good position at the moment. The budget's never easy. We're going to continue to do budget to try and make a fair settlement to all of our residents, and I wish I had time to talk more about affordable housing, because I think we really can drive that forward, and the receipt that we're getting from Preston Down Road, assuming that goes through in the way it's looking, will far outweigh the losses that Councillor Long said we'd made by not accepting the previous arrangements. Well, we just have to wait and see until we get the...
Thank you, Councillor Tyman. Councillor David Thomas, do you wish to reply?
Thank you very much indeed, Madam Mayor. I think you'd probably be surprised if I'd said no. So, £147 million net budget, and most of our debate has been about potential library services cuts and £20,000 toilet and £100,000. So the fact that out of all of that 147 million plus the other gross stuff, £300 million plus, and we just have a disagreement over those small areas, I think that's really, really positive for the council generally. And, you know, we need to acknowledge that that is where we are. I would also say that don't forget that all of the overview and scrutiny recommendations that came forward have been accepted and included within the budget. That we have had that continued strategic focused approach. A really big, and we haven't spoken about it, but a really big factor in all of this is the increase in the national insurance contributions and the increase in the minimum wage, and the impact of that on the council and the impact of that on all of our shareholders and indeed all business across the Bay and beyond. But I was asked to make an apology because of a comment that I said. The comment that I said, and I actually have it written down, was I said it is a budget with no cuts to services. I stand by that comment. Please show me any line within the budget where we are making cuts to any particular line within that spreadsheet. There are none at all. Libraries Unlimited, I can tell you categorically, none of our directors have been advised of any cuts within the services that they provide. We do absolutely, as Councillor Tyman said, we do accept that national insurance contributions are going to play a huge factor, not in all of the external and stakeholders' budgets, but also our own budget here within the council. Now, we have had some money included within the grant to cover that national insurance contribution, but it doesn't cover it wholeheartedly. It's not all paid. Therefore, there is a requirement. And also, when you start to look at adult social care and our providers through the ICB and the ICO, there is going to be huge additional pressures in all of that. And we haven't spoken about that this evening. We've spoken about £20,000 and whether Libraries Unlimited have advised us or have not. So I think, you know, against the backdrop of where we are, we absolutely acknowledge the additional monies that came in from government. We welcome that. That has absolutely put us in the position that we've been able to present this evening. And as we move forward this evening, and we'll be heading towards the leaders' agreement, probably after a comfort break, he says, hoping. And in the interest, we've had our debates, we've had our disagreements. I look forward to full support of the budget this evening. After all, this is Torbay's budget. This is the budget for our residents. There is a whole host of stuff in here that actually members opposite...
30 seconds, Councillor Thomas.
Members opposite have campaigned for, from the overview and scrutiny that we have included in here, to the £200,000 for our community grant for deprived communities. There are pieces in here that everyone can support. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. I will now take a recorded vote on the revenue and capital budget.
Members, when I call your name, please indicate how you wish to vote. Councillor Emile.
Abstain.
Councillor Billings.
4.
Councillor Brooke.
4.
Councillor Bryant. 4. Councillor Bye.
4.
Councillor Carter.
Against.
Councillor Cowell.
Abstain.
Councillor George Darling.
Abstain.
Councillor Mandy Darling. Councillor Steve Darling.
Abstain.
Councillor Douglas Dunbar.
Abstain.
Councillor Fellows.
For.
Councillor Foster.
For.
Councillor Fox.
Abstain.
Councillor Hutchins. Councillor Johns.
Abstain.
Councillor Barbara Lewis.
For.
Councillor Chris Lewis.
For.
Councillor Long.
Abstain.
Councillor Madison.
Abstain.
Councillor Penny.
Abstain.
Councillor Pentney.
Abstain.
Councillor Spigania.
For.
Councillor Stevens.
For.
Councillor Strang.
4.
Councillor David Thomas.
4.
Councillor Jacqueline Thomas.
For.
Councillor Tolshard. Councillor Tranter. Councillor Twelves.
For.
Councillor Tyman. Councillor Verdi.
Abstain.
Madam Mayor, there were 18 votes for, 1 against and 13 abstentions. The budget is therefore approved.
Thank you. That motion has been carried. We are going to have a 10-minute comfort break. See you back soon. Members, can we all please take our seats or make our way back to our seats? Okay, we are waiting still for Councillor Madison, but we'll just carry on whilst we're waiting for her. I move to item 8, the Council Tax 2025 to 2026. Please refer to to the late report circulated on the 24th of February 2025, page 7 in the supplement pack. Can Councillor Tyman please put his motion to the Council?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As we've spent a long time getting to this point, if Council will indulge me, I am just going to put forward that Council notes the items in 3.1, 3.2, 3.3, and that it approves the items in 3.4, 3.5, 3.6, 3.5 and 3.6. And if that's sufficient, I hope everyone's read the documents, and that will allow us to move on.
Thank you, Councillor Tyman. Is there a seconder?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I rise to second and unusually will not reserve my right.
I now invite debate. Councillor Tyman.
Thank you. I will allow us to go to the vote.
I will now move to the vote, which will be recorded.
Members, when I call your name, please indicate how you wish to vote. Councillor Emile.
For.
Councillor Billings.
For.
Councillor Brooke.
For.
Councillor Bryant. Councillor Bye.
For.
Councillor Carter.
For.
Councillor Cowell.
For.
Councillor George Darling.
For.
Councillor Mandy Darling. Councillor Steve Darling.
For.
Councillor Douglas Dunbar.
For.
Councillor Fellows.
For.
Councillor Foster.
For.
Councillor Fox. Councillor Hutchins. Councillor Johns.
For.
Councillor Barbara Lewis.
For.
Councillor Chris Lewis.
For.
Councillor Long.
For.
Councillor Madison.
Abstain.
Councillor Penny.
For.
Councillor Pentney.
For.
Councillor Spigania.
For.
Councillor Stevens.
For.
Councillor Strang.
For.
Councillor David Thomas.
For.
Councillor Jacqueline Thomas.
For.
Councillor Tolshard. Councillor Tranter. Councillor Twelves.
For.
Councillor Tyman. And Councillor Verdi.
For.
Madam Mayor, there were 31 votes for and 1 abstention. The motion is therefore carried.
Thank you. That's now carried. I move to item 9, budget monitoring 24-25, April to December 24, revenue and capital outturn forecast. Please refer to page 149. Can Councillor Timon please put the Cabinet's motion to the Council?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The budget monitoring report for Q3 has been through extensive discussion at overview and scrutiny. It came through Cabinet. I think that it feels to me like it's been discussed many times, and therefore I'm quite happy to move on to any questions. But they should be few and far between, I think, because the Council is only asked to note here the revenue aspects here and to agree that items be added to the capital budget. Those items are all grant-funded items. There is no borrowing involved in that, and therefore, effectively, these are things that are very often have already been signed off as records of decision by officers, and we are just now agreeing to their inclusion in the Council's budget. So I put that as my motion to the Council.
Thank you, Councillor Timon. Is there a seconder?
Very happy to stand to second this motion and reserve my right just in case someone wishes to ask questions. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. I now invite debates. Councillor Lewis, you reserved your right.
As I thought, not needed. Thank you.
I now move to the vote.
Councillor Timon.
Oh, Councillor Timon, sorry.
You may move to the vote.
I move to the vote. All those in favour? Okay, and that's unanimous, thank you. I move to item 10, good governance, the Torbay way, effective administration and opposition leaders, agreement principles and constitution amendments. Please refer to the late report circulated on the 21st of February 2025, page 7 of the supplement pack plus revised officer recommendations circulated earlier today. Can Councillor David Thomas please put his motion to the Council?
Thank you indeed, Madam Mayor. So first of all, I'm going to take the recommendation as printed because it's extremely lengthy. Just want to talk a little bit about the Leaders' Agreement. So the Leaders' Agreement is essentially a formal pact between the three political leaders in the Council, aimed primarily at improving governance by aligning the base priorities, establishing collaborative frameworks and working together on shared objectives. The agreement represents an understanding between council leaders to try to create a more cohesive and accountable local government structure that puts the needs of Torbay residents at the forefront. I want to personally thank group leaders and every single member of the council chamber for their considerable time, effort and commitment that it has taken for us all to get the place we are this evening. One thing is for certain, it has not been easy. It has required sometimes wholesale U-turns from groups to get to the position that we are of agreement that we are at now. There has been heartache, there's been upset, and there's been disappointment along the journey. However, I do believe it is a journey that was worth the outcome. Tonight, we bring forth the Torbay Way for Governance. The report is born out of our most recent LGA Corporate Peer Challenge, which always seek to help councils to both improve and innovate. The peer challenge is a voluntary process that councils can request from the LGA. And as leader of the council, I was extremely keen that we did put ourselves forward for an updated review. Our previous one had been held when I was Deputy Mayor way back in 2015. And although the guidance is that they should be conducted about every 5 years, I felt it was a real opportunity for us to engage in that process. The report from that process has been shared widely, and I believe that this is the final outstanding action from that LGA report. I was at this point going to talk a lot about the benefits of it. However, in the interests of trying to save as much time as possible, I think fundamentally what it does, it seeks to provide the council with an administration with defined criteria, including ensuring the mayor and deputy mayor positions sit within the administration, and also at the same time the role of opposition is strengthened. It's strengthened through making sure that the chair of audit and the chair of overview and scrutiny are positions that are held by the opposition, ensuring that if the chair of any committee sits within the administration, then the vice chair will be held by the opposition and vice versa. And at the same time, the role of the shadow cabinet has both been redesigned and strengthened. Furthermore, this evening we are going above and beyond the leaders' agreement that's down in front of us by reallocating all of the scrutiny leads to the opposition. This enables the opposition to be in complete control of the scrutiny function, which will allow for them to properly hold the administration to account. The revised recommendations that you have in front of you are complicated, but they allow all of those changes to be made on one single occasion. And furthermore, changes to the Constitution will follow after this in the next item, which will effectively solidify all the things within the leaders' agreement within our Constitution. Finally, a heartfelt thanks to all councillors, officers,
We've got 30
staff.
seconds remaining.
Thank you. And of course, Manny, who was our facilitator. We've all put the effort into getting this governance agreement across the line, and it would be fantastic to have unanimous support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor David Thomas. Is there a seconder? Councillor Long?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And if I could give Jenny to you just for a second. Yes. I rise to second, and I want to also thank councillors and officers for sort of supporting this incredibly long and very frustrating process at times. There have indeed been bumps along the way and some very frank conversations along the way. And I'm very much hoping that, in fact, this is a very significant first step. But I see this very much as a very first step along the journey that was spoken of, and I'm very much hoping that this arrangement will lead to much improved improvements such as information sharing and better relations across all our groups. Just one small thing, which I hope won't jeopardise the whole thing, but I think there was an online peer review during COVID, but I can't remember. I think there was something, wasn't there? But I look forward to things improving and resulting in a better perspective of the council by local residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I open debate, I can confirm that in accordance with standing orders, those councillors nominated have given consent for their nominations. I now invite debate. Councillor Cowell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And it has indeed been a long journey to get here tonight. And I think it's fair to say there were times along that journey that we weren't even sure whether we were going down dead ends, cul-de-sacs, roundabouts, or whatever. But, you know, because of the hard work and focus and commitment of those of us who actually put Torbay first, and I think that's all 36 of us in the room, plus our officers and across the council staff, we were determined to arrive at an agreement, and we have. And I think it is a solid agreement in terms of really putting into focus the role of an administration and the role of an opposition. And I think that's helpful for our officers and members to understand what those definitions are. And we've achieved that after a lot of soul searching, and Councillor Thomas is right, there have been significant shifts by individuals and groups along the way, but that's how sensible agreements are arrived at. And we have to make sure that we abide by it and work towards it constantly in everything we do. There are probably going to be bumps in the road, there always will be, but we've got the foundation here to make sure that we can refer back to it. It's in our constitution as well, in our standing orders, that gives it that real weight that's important to all of us. And I was sitting here reflecting during the course of the meeting, and budget meetings and any council meeting is always an opportunity for some interesting commentary from us all. I'm as guilty of it as some of the others in the opposite from the administration. And it is about local politics, national politics and whatever. But we have our eye on a bigger prize, and I referred to it earlier, and that is the very future of Torbay. As a local authority, as a successful local unitary authority, which we've been talking about tonight through the budget and other processes. So this agreement also, I think, actually builds on the successful partnership agreement that we had in the previous 4 years. And that's why I wasn't scared about actually entering into a formal agreement, because it does, as I say, form that foundation. There are challenges, we know that, we've seen some of those tonight, and there'll continue to be, but we have to find ways to work our way through it. And one of the key things that I've always felt as a councillor, it's an incredible honour to be a councillor in Torbay, to represent your community and your residents and your businesses, because we care about our bay. And the other thing, whilst it is incredibly challenging at times and hard work and can be rewarding, it should also be enjoyable. And I think for many of us in the last 18 months or so, that hasn't always been the case. And I think it's for our own health and well-being, as well as that for not just our senior officers, but all of our council staff who need to actually look up to us as the council to be able to respect us. So I'm more than happy to support this tonight, and along with Chris and Swithin and all colleagues, happy to work as hard to make it successful as we move forward. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Is there any further debate? Councillor Thomas?
I'm just happy to move to the vote. Thank you.
From the Chair, I wish to take a recorded vote on this item.
Members, when I call your name, please indicate how you wish to vote. Councillor Emile.
For.
Councillor Billings.
For.
Councillor Brooke.
For.
Councillor Bryant. Councillor Bay.
For.
Councillor Carter.
For.
Councillor Cowell.
For.
Councillor George Darling.
For.
Councillor Mandy Darling. Councillor Steve Darling.
For.
Councillor Douglas Dunbar.
For.
Councillor Fellows.
For.
Councillor Foster.
For.
Councillor Fox. Councillor Hutchins. Councillor Johns.
For.
Councillor Barbara Lewis.
For.
Councillor Chris Lewis. Councillor Long.
For.
Councillor Madison.
Abstain.
Councillor Penny.
For.
Councillor Pentney.
For.
Councillor Spigania.
For.
Councillor Stevens.
For.
Councillor Strang.
For.
Councillor David Thomas.
For.
Councillor Jacqueline Thomas.
For.
Councillor Tolshard. Councillor Tranter. Councillor Twelves.
4.
Councillor Timon. 4. Councillor Verdi. Madam Mayor, there were 31 votes for and 1 abstention. The motion is therefore carried.
Thank you. I now invite the group leaders to come forward and sign the leaders' agreement and principles.
Dave, turn round. Get a posh. Oh, okay. A posh rating.
Smile like you mean it.
Thank you, members. I now move to item 11, Constitution Amendments, various. Can Councillor Jackie Thomas please put her motion to the Council?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I am happy to propose that Council approves the amendments to the following parts of the Constitution. A. Officer Scheme of Delegation as set out in Appendix 1. B. Financial Regulations and Contracts Procedures as set out in Appendix 2. C. Standing Orders, Council Meetings, Petition Scheme as set out in Appendix 3. And D. Standing Orders, Council Meetings, Public Question Time as set out in Appendix 4 to this report. These amendments cover 2 areas. In turn, they are proposed changes to the thresholds for officer decisions in respect of leases, following benchmarking with other local authorities. This addresses historically low levels of delegation that would cause inefficiencies as the Council brings assets back under direct management following their transfer from the TDA. The changes are detailed in full in Appendices 1 and 2. The other amendments are to our standing orders to Council meetings. These centre around the rules for the number of petitions and public questions that can be presented at a Council meeting. The changes proposed aim to align principles where there is current disparity, and they benefit the efficient operation of Council meetings. Full details are in Appendices 3 and 4. I do hope these amendments get the full approval from the Council this evening. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Cowell?
Sorry, Madam Mayor. I'm more than happy to second and happy for debate to continue.
I now invite debate. Okay, if there's no further debate, we'll go back to Councillor Jackie Thomas.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think I'm happy to go to the vote. Thank you.
I now move to the vote. All those in favour?
And that's unanimous. Thank you. And that is the end of the meeting. Thank you.